Now the latest from ITV News in the West Country with Ian Axton and Kylie Pentelow.
Hello and welcome to the programme. Tonight we're live at the Royal Cornwall Show in Wadebridge for Cornwall's biggest day out.
More than 120,000 people are expected here over the next 3 days. Well, tonight we aim to give you a taste of the entertainment that's on offer and meet some of the characters that make this show so special.
We'll also be looking at some of the big issues affecting the rural community. On the day, farmers' leaders called on the government to invest in the future of their industry.
We'll also be hearing why more farmers than ever are harnessing the power of nature to keep their businesses afloat.
Good evening and welcome to the Royal Cornwall Show, and what a fantastic first day it's been here. We've been absolutely soaked in sunshine here in Wadebridge.
We have been so lucky, and you might just be able to see this is Jason Smith, who is an amazing stunt rider. He's on a quad bike at the moment. Here we go. Is he going to make it?
Yes.
Oh, he's awesome, isn't he?
He is, and they've just moved the lorry back, actually, to make that gap between the jump and the lorry even further. An incredible stunt rider. But what you're seeing in the show ring now is kind of not really the heart of the show. What's great about the Royal Cornwall Show is that they keep food, farming and agriculture right at the centre of everything that they do.
Farmers have been here today showing their livestock, of course, and proudly doing so. But behind those smiles, there is a concern for the future of their industry.
And those concerns have prompted the National Farmers Union to call on the new government to invest more in the future of farming, to encourage more people to take it up as a long-term career. Our Cornwall correspondent, Steve Hardy, reports.
The future of farming is far from cut and dried. Its survival depends on youngsters like 17-year-old Thomas Oatey.
The family's been in farming for years, and so I've grown up all around it, and it's just kind of what I like doing.
Are you confident there's a future in farming?
I think there is. I know a lot of it is the older generation these days, and someone has to take over, and that's hopefully me and some others, because obviously everyone needs food, so there's always going to be a need for farmers.
Emma McInnes, who's 27, has helped run a farm for 6 years. But she says to get by, they needed to diversify. Is it enough just to do farming?
No. If my husband and I were to be just pure farmers, we wouldn't be able to make it pay.
What else do you do?
My husband produces cattle from across the country. People send them to him, and he breaks them in and produces them to take them to shows and sales.
The Farming Minister George Eustace is at the show tomorrow. The Cornwall NFU says it'll be pressing him to safeguard the industry. And the best way of doing that, it says, is investing in young people.
It's very important to get the next generation in as well, and I know Mr Eustace is very keen on looking at ways how we can do that, how we can work with other youth organisations in the county and nationally as well, and how we can bring the next generation in.
A report out tomorrow reveals more worrying statistics for the industry. A survey by insurers Cordish Mutual and Farmers Weekly says more than half of the farmers in the UK haven't worked out who will take over their farms when they retire. That equates to more than 40,000 farms. The Duchy and Bicton colleges in Cornwall and Devon are crucial in trying to fill that gap. With other education partners, they support 40,000 students and have trained 10,000 apprentices in the last 10 years.
Less than half our students come from farming families. There's a huge future there for youngsters who are committed and have bright ideas.
One of their successful students is Rihanna Aldridge.
I think it's a wonderful experience. Not only can you get dirty and get your hands in, but you can really create a family yourself and get yourself set in for the future.
A future which depends on a new generation of farmers. Steve Hardy, ITV News, Wadebridge.
Well, let's follow up a couple of issues that were mentioned in Steve's report there with Minette Batters, who is the Deputy President of the National Farmers Union. Thanks very much for talking to us, Minette. That survey is quite worrying, isn't it? Up to 50% of farmers don't know who will inherit their farms when it's time for them to move on.
I think it is worrying, and it's a big role for us and something that we're really focusing on. I mean, tomorrow we've got a meeting about handing over to the next generation. You know, the average age of farmers now is 55. You know, we really want to say that this is a vibrant industry. It's not just actually about owning land, tenanting land. There are all sorts of jobs connected for youngsters throughout the agricultural supply chain. So I think it's really important that we showcase that, and this show is actually a great opportunity to say to the youngsters, look, there's a big future with agriculture here. We've got 60 million people to feed in this country. So not just about feeding people in this country, globally, actually producing food's a big job.
Now tomorrow, George Eustice, the farming minister, will be here. I saw him at the Devon County Show a couple of weeks ago, and I tried to get some policy out of him, some new agricultural policy for the new government. He wouldn't give me any. He basically said they're in listening mode at the moment. When you have his ear tomorrow, what specific policies will you be asking him for?
Well, we very much hope they're in doing mode, because now we've got a majority government. We know exactly who we're working for. I'm really pleased that one of our key policy asks was a long-term food strategy for farming, and they have pledged to 25 years long-term commitment to food and farming. And we really want to sit around the table and work out how that is going to happen. We've got at the moment a lot of challenges with the dairy industry. Obviously large parts of the southwest, Cornwall in particular, wholly reliant on the dairy industry. The role that government has to play in working in partnership with us, building that long-term strategy, ultimately branding British farming, is very, very important. So big challenges. Obviously can't not mention issues like bovine TB. We have a world-leading dairy industry, livestock industry in this country, higher standards of production and welfare, but we've got challenges. So we will be wanting the Minister to again crack on with their 25-year eradication strategy.
OK, Minette Batters, thank you very much indeed. Also in Steve's report, he touched on the issue of diversification. Well, an organic farm near Truro has actually just won the Duke of Cornwall's award for diversification. You can see here the Mewton family receiving that award. What they have done is transformed some old barns into what is a thriving wedding and food business now. They've been farming at Nancarrow for 200 years. Now into the 9th generation. Cathy Wardle has been speaking to them.
It's not what you'd expect on a typical farm. Live musicians play as paying guests tuck into organic beef and lamb reared just yards from the kitchen. Nancarrow's feast nights are taking the idea of field to fork to the extreme, giving diners a tour of the farm before serving up the homegrown meat.
As soon as we bring it outside, we get a bit of wood smoke in the air. As soon as you come around that corner and you smell that, you all of a sudden your anticipation's growing, and alongside that is your appetite, and by the time the food hits the table, you're having a good time.
As well as the pop-up feast nights, they've started hosting weddings in the newly converted barns, and in their first year taken 150% more bookings than expected. Through the years, though, the farm has had mixed fortunes. Now 90, Gordon Mewton remembers the boom years after the war when farmers like him got fixed prices for their produce.
We could make a profit because the government controlled the price more or less, and as I say, they wanted plenty of stuff produced. They made sure that you had money to produce it.
Gordon's son, Peter, now runs the farming operations. He switched to organic methods after a tough period in the 80s and has found a niche selling to farmers' markets, local restaurants, and now his daughter and son's on-site wedding and food business.
The venue is taking about half of my meat that I produce. The rest goes still to the farmers' market and other local markets.
Steve and Lucy are overseeing the weddings and catering whilst raising their 2 sons on the farm as well.
I'm the 9th generation to take on the farm, and I feel very much part of that history, but also the future as well. And day to day, when you're making decisions or building something, you're actually taking action which may be last generations in the future.
And to that end, they hope they're creating something that 9-month-old Joseph and 4-year-old Sam might also be able to earn their livings from. Cathy Wardle, ITV News.
Well, a great story there of how one family has had to adapt to keep afloat. But there are, of course, lots of other ways. We sent Bob Crampton to the Green Cornwall section of the showground.
Yes, Cornwall has been the pioneer for renewable energy for the last 25 years or so. And as I drove to the showground, I spotted at least 40 giant wind turbines. Even now, you can see behind me, those flags are showing there is a fresh wind here. The first commercial wind farm was established at Delabole here in Cornwall in 1991. Since then, hundreds more have sprung up around the county. There are now 360 wind farms and at least 65 solar farms. And to give you some idea of the amount of energy that they produce, well, it's the equivalent to 500 megawatts every year, and that's the output of one coal-fired power station. Now, of course, there has been resistance over the years to the wind farms, the solar farms, but are things changing? Are people becoming more accepting of renewable energy? Well, earlier on, I got the views and comments from some of the visitors here at the show.
They're using high-quality land. There's a lot of low-quality land in this country. Why don't they use that?
Well, it depends if you're using too good ground for like all the solar panels. Wind farms, it doesn't matter because there's a lot of places you can just put them in there.
I think at the end of the day, looking at coal, etc., maybe not in our lifetime, but what, a few hundred years? So we need to do something about it.
So there we have it, general acceptance, I think, of renewable energy in Cornwall. And over my shoulder, we can see it, there is a wind turbine. That's jointly owned by a guest who's with me, that's Ian Hodge. Ian, why did you want a wind turbine? Were you diversifying?
It was diversification, yes, the greater point was that. The turbine offered a regular income. General conception from the public is that the farmer says, no, I want so much of this cow or whatever, but it's not like that. We've got to take what is given. With the turbine and with solar and anything like that, it gives you a more or less a regular income, which you know you're going to get, which helps you plan for the future.
We've been involved in renewable energy for years. We've been promoting a positive policy for renewables of all different technologies, including wind. I know it's divisive, but we all have a very long-term agenda about energy. Cornwall's been at the forefront. We've got members who've been involved in schemes for all sorts of renewable technologies right from the word go. And we're very proud of that.
Can you understand people who are against them because they say they're a blot on the landscape?
I can completely understand the arguments. My own family have divided views, communities have divided views, governments have divided views. It's, it is just life. It's a debate, isn't it? We've got to thrash it out and we've got to decide where we're going with our energy.
Undoubtedly, renewable energy is a divisive issue. Some would say the critics are just tilting at windmills. In reality, though, the wind turbines that are already in situ are probably there to stay.
That was Bob there, and he will, of course, be back a little bit later in the programme with the weather forecast. He hasn't done too bad so far. I've had a good
he's
day.
Spot on. And we'll also be back in a few moments' time as well with a very special guest. Not animal, not human.
No, intriguing.
Stay with us to find out. Now I'll hand you to Katie in the studio.
Thank you very much, Ian. 20 families have been unable to return to their homes following a fire in Plymouth last night. Many say they've lost everything after the fire spread through a block of flats in Devonport. Richard Lawrence reports.
Fire crews were still tackling hotspots in the